is a beautiful day outside, but it's a little bit darker in here. But that doesn't matter because we are going to get down to the important work of doing some reading. Rich Dad Poor Dad in Chinese, but we're having a good time reading The Art of Thinking Clearly. Lots of little small stories. So even if you are jumping in right now, you're not missing anything because it is just the small little stories. So you're not missing out on or not starting at chapter 5 or 6 where you don't know what happened at the start of the book. So we already did chapter 20. We've done chapter 21. And we're up to 22, which is a really interesting title. You like me? You really, really like me? And this is called the liking bias. So let's get into it. Yes, I'm looking forward to doing some reading. Hopefully you are enjoying the listening and the learnings and the commentary. And I'm also looking forward to your thoughts and your ideas. And Amanda has said that she is good, which is good. Let's get into it. Kevin has just bought 2 boxes of fine Margaux. So that is, for those who are not so familiar with wine, that is a part of the Bordeaux region, and it is known as quite a good wine. He rarely drinks wine, not even Bordeaux, but the sales assistant was so nice, not fake or pushy, just really likable. So he bought them. Joe Girard is considered the most successful car salesman in the world. His tip for success: there's nothing more effective in selling than getting the customer to really believe that you like him and care about him. Girard does not just talk the talk. His secret weapon is sending a card to his customers each month. Just one sentence salutes them. I like you. The liking bias is startlingly simple to understand, and yet we continually fall prey to it. It means this: the more we like someone, the more inclined we are to buy from or help that person. Still, the question remains, what does likable even mean? According to research, we see people as pleasant if A, they're outwardly attractive, B, they are similar to us in terms of origin, personality, or interests, and C, they like us. Consequently, advertising is full of attractive people. Ugly people seem unfriendly and don't even make it in the background. CA, they are outwardly attractive. In addition to engaging super attractive types, advertising also employs people like you and me. Those who are similar in appearance, accent, or background. In short, the more similar, the better. Mirroring is a standard technique in sales to get exactly this effect. Here, the salesperson tries to copy the gestures, language, and facial expressions of his prospective client. If the buyer speaks very slowly and quietly, often scratching his head, it makes sense for the seller to speak slowly and quietly and to scratch his head now and then too. That makes him likable in the eyes of the buyer, and thus a business deal is more likely. Finally, it's not unheard of for advertisers to pay us compliments. How many times have you bought something because you're worth it? Oh, who's heard that one before? Here, factor C comes into play. We find people appealing if they like us. Compliments work wonders, even if they ring hollow as a drum. I remember I used to sell concert tickets in Vienna, and I would talk to people for about 20 minutes and show them pictures and tell them about this amazing concert in this beautiful gold decorated room. And there'd be a whole orchestra and there'd be ballerinas and dancing, and you could get up and dance with the ballerina, or at least most people didn't, but I did. And so I used to sell it that way. And I remember I would talk to people for 20 minutes sometimes. And 2 or 3 times I had it happen where somebody would talk to me for 20 minutes. They'd start to walk off and they'd turn back. And rather than coming back to me, they'd go to somebody else. And so I did all of the hard work. I managed to stop them. I managed to give them the spiel. I managed to do all of these different things. But they obviously didn't like me, and there was something that wasn't aligned or congruent with what it was that I was doing. And they'd turn around and they'd walk up to somebody that they felt looked more like them, spoke more like them. Whatever it was, they wanted. And the funny thing is, they could have bought from me immediately, but they said, no, they have to think about it. They walked off. And within 10 seconds, they'd turn around, but they'd go to a different seller. It was quite amazing. And how many times has it happened to you where you've gone to a shop and you know that the price is good, you want to buy the product, but you just don't like the salesman that much? There's something about them. And then you go away and you go to a different shop and you buy the same thing at the same price. Everything's exactly the same, but it's just you feel much better about the salesperson. It happens a lot, and keep an eye out for it. It is quite interesting. So-called multi-level marketing, selling through personal networks, works solely because of the liking bias. That's why they work, because the people that you are dealing with usually, well, there's a difference, because I always tell people when you're going into network marketing, don't only rely on family and friends, because if you do that, you're going to be banned from all weddings and funerals at some point because you're going to be annoying your family. So the best way to do it is to actually set it up so that you are doing it like a legitimate business and actually looking for leads, people that don't really know you, but that do like you. But one of the reasons why people manage to get success in the first place is because people want to support their family, they want to support their friends, and so they already like you. So they will buy just to support you, not because they actually like the product, want the product, or anything along those lines. And that's why it feels a little bit manipulative to some people, and why some people end up straining their relationships, because they only focus on people that already know them and like them, and they will burn some bridges because of it, because they are only focused on continuing to talk to people that they already know, rather than branching out and setting it up like a real business. Though there are excellent plastic containers in the supermarket for a quarter of the price, Tupperware generates an annual turnover of $2 billion. Why? The friends who hold the Tupperware parties meet the second and third congeniality standard perfectly. Aid agencies employing the liking bias to great effect. Their campaigns use beaming children or women almost exclusively. Never will you see a stone-faced, wounded guerrilla fighter staring at you from billboards, even though he also needs your support. Conservation organizations also carefully select who gets the starring role in their advertisements. It's interesting because there's also something which is known as, what's it called? I think it's called charity porn, where they talk about the fact that they will go into certain areas and they will only take photos of the things that don't look so good. And there might be an area where people do have some means, but they will take all the children that don't have shoes. Even though that there are children in this village where they do have shoes, but they'll only take the children that don't have shoes to make it appear like the children don't have shoes, or that the people are more impoverished than they are. And it's called charity porn, and it's also something that you need to watch out for, because they will use only the pictures that they think are going to influence you to donate, even though that village may not need, the donations as much as they may need to. Have you ever seen a World Wildlife Fund brochure filled with spiders, worms, algae, or bacteria? Of course not. Most people don't like them. They're also just as endangered species as pandas, gorillas, koalas, and seals. And even more important for the ecosystem. Which would you prefer to see? Would you prefer to see the pandas and the gorillas and the koalas and the seals, or spiders, worms, algae, or bacteria? The answer is quite simple. Even though there are people obviously that like worms and that like algae and bacteria, but we feel nothing for them. Well, not everybody, but the majority. The more human a creature acts, the more similar it is to us, the more we like it. The bone skipper fly is extinct. Too bad. Nobody really cares about the bone skipper fly because it's not very human-like. Politicians too are maestros of the liking bias. Depending on the makeup and interests of an audience, they emphasize different topics, such as residential areas, social background, or economic issues. And the interesting thing about politicians is that they will also speak very broadly. They never talk directly about a particular school or the details of what it is that they're going to work on, because that doesn't speak to everybody in the room. Let's say that I'm talking to a group of people and I'm going to say, okay, we want to make sure that each school is going to get individual attention. And what's a good example? Because I'm so used to politicians, everybody's so used to politicians are speaking so broadly. So we're going to have more teachers. We're going to make sure that we're going to implement something on a larger scale. But they'll never talk about an individual school, because that means that the people on the TV are going to feel that they're left out, because they're not talking about their particular school. They're talking about a school. And it's even the case that when a politician visits a particular school, and talks about education. They're talking broadly, but we feel a little bit less connection, and the parents at that school are going to feel a much stronger connection and like the person much more because they are at that school. And so politicians have to speak very broadly. And that's why a lot of problems don't get solved by politicians, because they talk to the audience so that the majority of the audience are going to be happy. And so they don't actually solve the problem because they're not willing to get into the details. They only talk about the bigger issue, and they only solve the bigger issue in a very inefficient way. So it's very interesting. And they flatter us. Each potential voter is made to feel like an indispensable member of the team. Your vote counts. Of course your vote counts, but only by the tiniest of fractions, bordering on the irrelevant. So these are things to keep an eye on. I love this book. I don't agree with everything, but the principles can save you from some, because there's a lot of things that manipulate us out in the world, and this is going to help us to be less manipulated and understand how things work and why we're influenced by things. A friend who deals in oil pumps told me how he once closed an 8-figure deal for a pipeline in Russia. Bribery, I inquired. Shook his head. We were chatting, and suddenly we got on the topic of sailing. It turned out that both of us, the buyer and me, were die-hard 470 dinghy fans. From the moment on, he liked me. I was a friend, so the deal was sealed. Amiability works better than bribery. That's actually very true. People only have a price up to a certain point. So if you're a salesperson, make buyers think you like them, even if this means outright flattery. And if you're a consumer, always judge a product independent of who is selling it. Banish the salespeople from your mind, or rather, pretend you don't like them. That's a very interesting chapter. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on that one. And here we go, Mladen saying, there are too many fakes and pretenders. Good products and businesses are ruined. The economy is ruined. Absolutely. And it's because people understand these principles and they're able to get results, not necessarily based on merit, but because of all of these little strategies and hacks. And there's a lot of greed in the world based around wanting to get ahead. And that is a conversation for a whole other day, because we'd be able to talk about that all day and all night, I am sure. So if you do need to make sure that you can stay ahead, though, and that's the challenge. So other people are getting ahead. So if we're falling behind, we also have to get ahead. So we can also use these to our advantage, but you need to also have your own moral compass on where you're at with everything. So let's have a look at tomorrow. This was a really good chapter. Tomorrow is going to be chapter 23. Don't cling to things. It's called the endowment effect. So I'm looking forward to reading that for you tomorrow. And James has said hello in the meantime. There we go. Say follow to James. Look forward to being in touch. Oh, not tomorrow, Monday. Yes, I forgot that it was Friday. Good reminder, Mladen. Always on top of things. So on Monday, we will have a talk about chapter 23. Don't cling to things. It's the endowment effect. Hopefully everybody doesn't get withdrawal symptoms from missing out on the reading for the weekend. And we'll see whether I need to be very careful I don't overdo things. But I love the reading, so we might look at doing it on the weekend at some point. But I need to have some days off and actually work on some other things that I'm doing, so that we can make sure that I like you and give you some really amazing things outside of just the reading, but also the cash flow and eventually a research club. And we have a couple of other things going on, but I need to take it step by step because I overdo it a little bit from time to time and I will burn myself out. So that's also a lesson for you all not to do that. I'm going to leave you to have a great weekend. It's always wonderful having you here for the reading. I really appreciate your comments and ideas. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all on Monday. Have a great weekend and we'll get to chapter 23 and have a great time again. See you then.